everyone. My name is Jeff, and I go by John Doe Juggalo, and this is my son Tristan. And today we are going to be talking about
Chucky Season 3, Episode 2. And once again, I think they did a really solid job building up and continuing the story. I don't feel like they geared too far in one direction or geared too far away from what we were focusing on. I feel like they kept the focus in, they kept the story moving. And this episode, like last episode, for me, I was very, very invested in everything that was going on, especially with the characters and especially with what the trio was doing this episode and how they were going to get involved. Overall, I really enjoyed everything they did in this episode. So I want to get that out of the way right now, that I did enjoy this episode. I thought it was really good.
It was really good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Now, did you watch it on Peacock this week as well?
I did. Yeah.
Me too. So I did watch it with the commercials, which I think my same comment as last week is they definitely filmed the show knowing there was going to be commercials. They definitely plant those times pretty seamlessly.
Yeah. So. Yeah. But yeah, overall for me, guys, it was a positive. It was another really good episode in my opinion, and it kept me invested. And it's a very interesting story that we're building on so far. And I think the things that they introduced in this episode, when it comes to, once again, some more secrets involving the first family, I think are done really well and are keeping me intrigued, and it's stuff that we're going to be seeing for the rest of the season. So I am really excited to see how they continue that.
Yeah, with the new family and everything.
Yeah.
They definitely pivoted a lot of attention to, well, both the new kids. Particularly the older one with the group of three, but the younger one by just being characteristic, I guess. He got one of the infamous F-bombs of the episode, being the youngest of the, I guess, reoccurring cast now. So I thought that was kind of funny. But they really used him for comedic role this time, which is good because
he wasn't really in episode too much. This episode, he wasn't really in it too much, but they gave a lot more of the focus on Grant, which is the teenager in the first family, and that involves with how the trio is going to go further with their plan to get Chucky this season. And I think everything they did with Grant and building his character and kind of showing who he is as a person, I think they did it really well. They showed some scenes with him in school and just showing kind of a little bit more of Grant's personal life, which is something I wanted to see because I really did enjoy everything they did with him in the last episode, even though he was not in it for too much. But in this episode, he gets a lot more of the focus when it comes to the first family. And I did enjoy everything that he did when it came to the trio and the dynamic that they had as the four characters. I thought it worked really well.
Yeah, they're setting him up really good to be another protagonist. So
yeah,
he's definitely social media obsessed, which I think is kind of like a callback to modern society in a way.
Yeah, and in a way, it almost feels kind of like how Lexi was in season 1, but not as amplified. Like, he's definitely still got a heart for sure. When Lexi in season 1 felt like she was just really just cruel, and that was her whole personality, was that she was cruel. And you can still feel the humanization in Grant in this episode, even though he has a little bit of that, I'm part of the first family, I'm popular. You can still feel that popular energy coming off of him, but he still feels like a real person as a character.
Yeah, he wants real friends that don't see him as the president's son. And he doesn't really say that, but you can feel that that's what he's trying to get at with some of the things that he does say.
Yeah, he just wants to be understood. He wants to find people that actually understand him on a personal level, people that he can relate with. But the first topic I want to get into when it comes to this episode is, once again, the effects on the kills. We end up getting 2 kills this episode, and the very first one heavily used gore, and I think they did a really good job setting up the scene as it is, just setting up the kill.
Yeah, there was even some foreshadowing beforehand.
In the first episode, even.
Well, I'm talking for that actual kill, there was some foreshadowing. Yeah. Like, there was a missing instrument. And then that ended up being...
Yeah, they ended up foreshadowing...
For said kill.
Yeah, they ended up foreshadowing that in the first episode as well. With what was used in that scene. They ended up foreshadowing a little bit in the first episode. And it actually came to effect in this episode. And the kill, I really enjoyed it, but I thought it was slightly over the top with how it finished. But the effects still look good, and it wasn't too over the top to where I'm just taken out of the scene because it just doesn't make sense logistically. But I like the kill, and I think the effects are still great, and they still look really grounded and real, and it's gruesome. This is a very gruesome season when it comes to the kills, especially for a television show. I think they did a really good job with the effects once again. And we do get one more death in this episode.
Which is a surprise character.
And it's super out of left field.
Yeah, definitely to just pull the rug out from underneath the main three. Now, I really liked the kill. Was it the first suffocation?
In the season, yes.
In the season,
yes. Yeah.
Whoever did the puppet work for that did great, because the way that Chucky was just kind of hanging on back there and like doing his struggling.
Yeah, and the facial expressions of Chucky, especially throughout the season, but in this episode, the expressions of Chucky really do help and kind of... when we want to have Chucky be serious, the facial expressions do matter in the doll. And I think the animatronics and everything, which is something I wanted to touch on in the last discussion, but I just didn't, was the animatronics and how they look, because I think they look great. I think they're doing a really good job with keeping up with the animatronics, making sure they don't look too janky, while also not making it look like too fluid, because it's a doll. And I think they just keep finding a good balance throughout the entire show and the entire franchise, but especially in this season, they're doing a great job with the animatronics as well.
I mean, what do they use? Like 8 puppeteers per episode or something?
Something like that. Yeah, I mean, you can see on the credits that when they kind of fly by, there's like at least 6, at the very least. But yeah, the animatronics, the effects, all that was really good this episode. And to get back to what we were talking about just a minute ago with that surprise kill, it's definitely something that might upset some fans. And that's all I really want to say when it comes to the kill, because I don't want to spoil anything, I don't want to give anything away, but it may upset some fans, and it kind of upsetted me a little bit, because
it was like we were given a little something dangled in front of us, and then just it was taken away.
Yeah, it was taken as soon as it was like things were getting interesting. It kind of just cut off, which was sad. But at the same time, I feel like with how the kill was used, I feel like it's going to be effective in continuing the story and upping the stakes of the season.
It's definitely story progressing quickly.
It's a kill that definitely is showing the stakes of the season for me.
Sure, setting them pretty high.
Yeah. And the next thing that I want to touch on is the whole one doll aspect that, was in the beginning of this franchise, and he was just one doll all the way up until Cult of Chucky, and then they started introducing the multiple dolls. And it seems like so far, we're back to just one doll again. And that's something that's at least important to me, and I want to discuss it, because it's something that does matter to me. I think if you're trying to have Chucky be more serious, more grounded, like it seems like they're going this season, one doll is definitely the most effective way of doing that. Because when you have multiple dolls, one, it's hard to keep up for certain people. And it
just became like Chucky was unstoppable at that point, because there was always just another Chucky around the corner.
Yeah, another Chucky. Oh, don't worry, because there's going to be another Chucky, so don't worry about this. And that was a part of last season, especially when you came to the end of last season. That definitely, I guess you could say, kind of just irritated me. But it seems like in this season, that's something that won't even really have to be worried about, because we're back to just one doll again, is what it seems. But the next thing that I want to touch on is, once again, with the tone. Because the tone is still saying it's very consistent in terms of it's not going too campy in one particular part of the episode and then going back. Like, it's consistently fairly dark.
It feels very old school Child's Play 1.
Yeah. Very old school.
So that's very nice.
Yeah. It feels... Chucky himself, the lines here are given, the lines are a lot more chilling. They're not just used for comedic effect like they have been in the past. His lines, while they do have comedic value, they're used in more of a chilling and creepier way in the season. The last thing that I want to touch on is the trio themselves. And in the last discussion, I said that was my one complaint going into the new season was I feel like that they're getting sort of played out. And in this episode, I feel like that problem pretty much kind of goes away. Like, it's still kind of there. It's like, okay, we could still use new characters and kind of just leave these ones as, like, legacy characters.
But we could really kind of see this episode could be a major pivot point for the story to change to something else.
Yeah. But like I said before with Grant, I like all the stuff they do when it comes to how they're trying to get to Chucky, which they're using Grant to try to get their way into stopping Chucky. And I think all those scenes are really done well. And I kind of like the awkwardness that they had with Grant in the scene. And I feel like it was played out good. The acting was pretty good, because that's a problem I've had with the trio as is throughout the 2 seasons. The acting is very up and down, hit or miss. And so far this season, I feel like the acting has been pretty good. So if that's something that has turned you off from the show in the previous seasons, season 3, I feel like the whole trio is consistently pretty good. Especially when it comes to Lexi. I feel like her actress does a really good job at portraying multiple different scenes that she needs to. Being angry, like, she can really portray everything. And that's something that I had a little bit of a problem with in the earlier seasons, was the range. It didn't really feel like they had much range, because they were definitely new actors and actresses. But I feel like in this season, so far, they've really stepped up their game in the acting, and that's something that has definitely made me happy, because it's easier to watch the show whenever you don't cringe at every line that an actor says.
Yeah.
And I feel like so far with the 2 episodes, they're doing a really good job at keeping it going and just keeping their acting at a good stance. But the final thing that I want to touch on is, and this could be left up in the comments if this wants to be discussed, is kind of like predictions on where we're going to go for the next episode, or where we think we're going to go for the remaining bit of the season after episode 2's end. We're going to start getting explanations for Caroline and Tiffany.
For Glenn and Glenda, or just Glenn, I guess now?
Yeah, Gigi, I'm pretty sure is what they got referred to at the end of last season.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's something we can leave up to people in the comments if they've watched the episode, is kind of, what do you guys think is going to happen for the rest of the season? Because the way this episode is left off, there's a lot of interpretation. A lot of different things can happen, and I'm really excited to see where it goes for the rest of the season. And that's pretty much all I want to touch on for this discussion, is what I listed throughout this review. But that's pretty much it for me. I really, really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was really solid.
Yeah, like, and then, I don't know, I really liked the way that, again, like last week, the cinematography for the way it ended on the ending shot was great. Mm-hmm. This week, it wasn't necessarily the ending shot, but it was like the last 2 lines. Yeah. The "we're coming for you" and the "no, I'm waiting for you." Yeah. It was a really good way to end this the episode, I think, and keep us kind of on our toes for next week and what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's getting really interesting, because I think we're getting real close to the kids interacting with Chucky again, which it's been a little while now since they've had interaction since the end of last season.
Yeah, so it's just been phone calls so far. Just ominous phone calls from Chucky so far.
So that's where I'm hoping the next episode takes us. Season-wise, I'm not sure we're going to know for a little while still, but mm-hmm. I'm excited to see, because it is keeping that darker tone, and I have been enjoying that.
Yeah.
And his one-liners are still just enough quippy comedy that the people that like Chucky for the comedy are still getting the comedy.
Yes, so. For sure.
But I think that's probably going to do it for us on this episode, right? I mean, it seemed like this episode wasn't even as long as last week's. It seemed like it went by quicker.
Yeah, it definitely went by pretty quick. This was a very enjoyable episode and definitely kept me invested to where I was like, when it was over, I was sad but also very excited for next week.
Yeah. Now, I think the pacing was really good this week, so maybe that's why it seemed faster.
Yeah.
But I didn't really pay attention to the runtime or compare the two, but it may have been even just a little shorter. And I really wouldn't have known, but the pacing was real good, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's going to do it here for us today on this discussion. Like he said, down in the comments, go ahead and talk about where we think this season might be going. And if you wouldn't mind giving us a like and hitting that little bell notification for the channel, and subscribe if you haven't. We'll be back next week for another one of these. And hopefully we'll have even more to discuss. Maybe we'll get 3 kills next week.
Hopefully. I'm very excited for next week's episode. It's going to be great.
I think it's going to be as well. And we'll see you guys afterwards. Bye for now.